Okay. It's bright, I know. Got all these bright lights. Hey. Hey there, little boy. Hey. Hey. Okay. Today's story has to do with planning all the way to the end. Okay? Judgment. The ending is everything. Plan all the way to it, taking into account all the possible consequences, the obstacles, and twists of fortune that might reverse your hard work and give the glory to others. By planning to the end, you will not be overwhelmed by circumstances and you will know when to stop. Gently guide fortune and help determine the future by thinking far ahead. That's so true. Just like I've said in the past, you got to think about life like a chess game, okay? You got to make sure you got to look at all the pieces, look at all the factors, all the variables. You have to find out, how does that affect me? What am I going to do? What's going to happen? If I do this, what's going to happen? If I do this, what is that person going to do? Everyone's going to respond in a certain way to suit their own interests, and you have to decide how that's going to affect you, okay? So that's what planning all the way to the end means, and we're going to read a story that has to do with planning all the way to the end, okay? Okay? So this is about Otto von Bismarck. Okay? In 1863, the Prussian premier Otto von Bismarck surveyed the chessboard of European power as it then stood. The main players were England, France, and Austria. Prussia itself was one of several states in the loosely allied German Federation. Austria, dominant member of the Federation, made sure that the other German states remained weak, divided, and submissive. Bismarck believed that Prussia was destined for something far greater than servant boy to Austria. This is how Bismarck played the game. His first move was to start a war with lowly Denmark. Oh, bless you. In order to recover the former Prussian lands of Schleswig and Holstein. He knew that these rumblings of Prussian independence might worry France and England, so he enlisted Austria in the war, claiming that he was recovering Schleswig-Holstein for their benefit. In a few months after the war was decided, Bismarck demanded that the newly conquered lands be made part of Prussia. The Austrians, of course, were furious, but they compromised. First, they agreed to give the Prussians Schleswig, and a year later they sold them Holstein. The world began to see that Austria was weakening and that Prussia was on the rise. Bismarck's next move was his boldest. In 1866, he convinced King William of Prussia to withdraw it from the German Federation, and in doing so, to go to war with Austria itself. King William's wife, his son and the crown prince, and the princes of the other German kingdoms vehemently opposed such a war. But Bismarck, undaunted, succeeded in forcing the conflict, and Prussia's superior army defeated the Austrians in the brutally short 7 weeks war. The king and the Prussian generals then wanted to march on Vienna, taking as much land from Austria as possible. But Bismarck stopped them. Now he presented himself as on the side of peace. The result was that he was able to conclude a treaty with Austria that granted Prussia and the other German states total autonomy. Bismarck could now position Prussia as the dominant power in Germany and the head of a newly formed North German Confederation. The French and the English began to compare Bismarck to Attila the Hun and to fear that he had designs on all of Europe. Once he had started on the path to conquest, There was no telling where he would stop. And on the path to conquest, there was no telling where he would stop. And indeed, 3 years later, Bismarck provoked a war with France. First, he appeared to give his permission to France's annexation of Belgium. Then, at the last moment, he changed his mind. Playing a cat-and-mouse game, he infuriated the French Emperor Napoleon III and stirred up his own bless you, stirred up his own king against the French. To no one's surprise, war broke out in 1870. The newly formed German Federation enthusiastically joined in the war on France. And once again, the Prussian military machine and its allies destroyed the enemy army in a matter of months. Although Bismarck opposed taking any French land, the generals convinced him that Alsace-Lorraine would be taken. Now all of Europe feared the next move of the Prussian monster, led by Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor. And in fact, a year later, Bismarck founded the German Empire with the Prussian king as the newly crowned emperor, and Bismarck himself a prince. But then something strange happened. Bismarck instigated no more wars, and while the other European powers grabbed up land for colonies in other continents, he severely limited Germany's colonial acquisitions. He didn't want more land for Germany, but more security. For the rest of his life, he struggled to maintain peace in Europe and to prevent further wars. Everybody assumed he had changed, mellowing with the years. They had failed to understand this was the final move of his original plan. Did you get that? So the interpretation is this. There's a simple reason why most men never know when to come off the attack. They form no concrete idea of their goal. Once they achieve victory, they only hunger for more. To stop, to aim for a goal, and then keep to it seems almost inhuman. In fact, yet nothing is more critical to the maintenance of power. The person who goes too far in his triumph creates a reaction that inevitably leads to a decline. The only solution is to plan for the long run, foresee the future with as much clarity as the gods on Mount Olympus who look through the clouds and see the ends of all things. From the beginning of his career in politics, Bismarck had one goal, to form an independent German state led by Prussia. He instigated the war with Denmark not to conquer territory, but to stir up Prussian nationalism and unite the country. He incited the war with Austria only to gain Prussian independence. This was why he refused to grab Austrian territory, and he fomented the war with France to unite the German kingdoms against the common enemy, and thus to prepare for the formation of a united Germany. Once this was achieved, Bismarck stopped. He never let triumph go to his head, was never tempted by the siren call of more. He held the reins tightly, and whenever the generals or the king or the Prussian people demanded new conquests, he held them back. Nothing would spoil the beauty of his creation, certainly not a false euphoria that pushed those around him to attempt to go past the end that he had so carefully planned. Experience shows that if one foresees from far away the designs to be undertaken, one can act with speed when the moment comes to execute them. That was said by Cardinal Richelieu, who lived from 1585 to 1642. Okay? So what do you think, Mr. Elijah? So you always have to plan. You always have to plan, plan, plan. Other people just do things without a plan. You don't want to be that person. You want to be the person who holds the strings. So you have to have a plan A, you have to have a plan B, and when those go badly, you have to have a plan C. Always have a plan. Never leave anything to chance if you can help it. Because, trust me, that's not the way to go. Okay? You did a good job. You're a good listener. And I love you. What was that? What'd you say?
Thank you for the story, Daddy.
Did you hear that? You're welcome, son. Anytime. I'll be more than happy to read you a story. Listen, there's some Aesop's fate. Oh, okay. Here it is. King. Okay. Here's a story about the king, the Sufi, and the surgeon. In ancient times, a king of Tartary was out walking with some of his noblemen. At the roadside was an Abdul, a wandering Sufi, who cried out, "Whoever will give me 100 dinars, I will give him some good advice." So the king stopped and said, "Abdal, what is this good advice for 100 dinars?" "Sir," answered the Abdal, "order the sum to be given to me, and I will tell it you immediately." The king did so, expecting to hear something extraordinary. The dervish said to him, "My advice is this: never begin anything until you have reflected what will be the end of it." At this, the nobles and everyone else present laughed. That's what they all did. They all laughed. And saying that the Abdul had been wise to ask for his money in advance. But the king said, "You have no reason to laugh at the good advice this Abdul has given me. No one is unaware of the fact that we should think well before doing anything. But we are daily guilty of not remembering, and the consequences are evil." Evil. That's evil. I very much value this dervish's advice. The king decided to bear the advice always in his mind and commanded it to be written in gold on the walls and even engraved on his silver plate. Not long afterward, a plotter desired to kill the king. He bribed the royal surgeon with a promise of the prime ministership. If he thrust the poisoned lancet into the king's arm, when the time came to let some of the king's blood, a silver basin was placed to catch the blood. Suddenly, the surgeon became aware of the words engraved upon it: "Never begin anything until you have reflected what will be the end of it." It was only then that he realized that if the plotter became king, he could have the surgeon killed instantly and would not need to fulfill his bargain. The king, seeing that the surgeon was now trembling, asked what was wrong with him, and so he confessed the truth. At that very moment, the plotter was seized, and the king sent for all the people who had been present when the Abdal gave his advice, and said to them, "Do you still laugh at the dervish?" So, Caravan of Dreams, Indy Shah, 1968. What do you think? Pretty cool story, huh? I know you don't think anyone tells stories as good as your Papa D. I agree. Uh-huh. Competition, you always got to be in a competition with yourself. Do you have anything to say, Mr. Elijah? Huh? Your mom told me that you got your Social Security card now. You're growing up. Gonna get you a birth certificate. I'm gonna get you a passport. They're gonna get you a lot of money in your bank account. How's that? That'll be pretty good, won't it? Hmm? Hmm? Oh, what do you have to say? Hmm? Yeah, you want to say hello to your future self? Hey, look, 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 look. Oh, say hi. Hi. How are you doing? Do you have a message to your future self? No? Okay. Say goodbye then, Mr. Elijah. Goodbye. Goodbye.